Lord Otter, what's going on, man?
Nothing much on my end. I've been making a lot of uh, finishing touches, I could say, with my novel. I'm hoping to get that out by the end of the month. That's kind of been my
Awesome.
priority lately. Uh,
I
things have
understand
been,
that. Yeah,
there's
I
been a
now
lot of
have a.
progress, a lot of things going on. I just finished getting art and sketches and a few assets done between myself and Neutron Bore. And that's kind of where my priorities are at the moment.
Awesome.
But other than that, it's been a lot of fun lately. That's how I would
Cool.
describe it.
Yeah, I'm kind of in that same area. Not as advanced as you are at the moment. You're hoping to have it out by the end of the month. I'm hoping to have mine out. Right now, I'm shooting at October, but I now got a manuscript completely on the paper. Now I can just sit there and tweak and work with it over the next few weeks.
Let's see. With me, I'm hoping to have the manuscript like fully polished after all the uh, feedback from beta readers. The
Mhm.
actual story itself, I'm hoping to have out by late August, early September. That's the
Oh,
goal at the
gotcha.
moment.
I thought you were publishing by the end of the month.
Unfortunately, not. It's been sort of a juggling act at the moment. Uh,
Yeah.
Trying to get it to where I'm personally content with it, which it seems like it's nearly there. It,
Cool.
it's just a little farther, I guess.
Yeah, I am not even anywhere near ready for close to beta readers. I only have the first rough draft and that's it. I got a lot of tweaking to do on that. But I'm hoping the next 3-4 weeks, I'm hoping by the end of the month it'll be ready for some beta readers.
Oh, jeez. I'm listening to you guys, and I'm like, it took me 9 hours just to get half a paragraph the other day because I couldn't figure out which way I wanted to go.
Well,
I
remember,
feel that.
Maji, I've been working on this for 2 years.
Yeah, I was about to say myself, I've been working on this for 2 years.
Yeah, because even though you look at the publication of my first book,
Mhm.
I sat on that book for almost a year before it went to publish,
Gotcha.
and I had already started work on Bad Kitty 2 while it was sitting there in limbo.
Yeah,
Slow
So
burn.
it's not I'm not banging them out like Black Knight. I don't have the somebody posted an awesome GIF in the Gilded, said Black Knight be like, and it was from an anime where this mechanical hand split into like multiple, the finger split into multiple
oh yeah, Ghost in the
digits and
Shell.
just
Yeah, it's
started
Ghost in the
Typist.
Shell.
typing all over the keyboard.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's Ghost in the Shell.
love that scene. I was like, yeah,
No.
that's how I do data entry.
It's not too far off from how I type, to be quite honest.
It's the letter sorter from Men in Black 2.
Problem is with myself, I'm a bit more of a perfectionist, and that does cause me to go back sometimes. First of all, I always hear that with a lot of writers, their first book is the hardest because they're still figuring out a lot of what works and what doesn't, and then after that, it's where you have more of a rhythm going on. You know what needs to be done, you know what to avoid, what to lean into, but the first time around is the hardest.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, you're finding your
the
style.
first time around was definitely rougher, but the second one I was finding just as difficult, just in different ways.
Yeah, I could
But
definitely see that. I can very much see that.
Yeah,
yeah, well, I mean the way it moves is different. Like the first book all takes place within one day. The second book is kind of spread out throughout a year. So it changed the dynamic quite a bit in a way I wasn't prepared for. That's why I got to go and kind of restructure the first third, because the pacing I am not at all happy with. It could be much better.
I
I
can
got.
see that. Pacing is an obvious one. I could also see how information is doled out. That's
Hmm.
another concern.
Yeah, because there's a lot of info that needs to be doled out, and I just don't want to do info dump after info dump and just be boring. It needs to come across in interesting ways.
I understand that.
Also, it's weird. I have the advantage with the second book of an established world to build off of, but in the first book, it was an advantage where you were learning, with every page, every paragraph, you're learning a little something new about how the systems worked. In the second book, that's already known, so it changes up the pacing, and I gotta figure out the new balancing routine for that.
I think I approach storytelling a little differently. To me, it's about where the reader, or since I got that screenplay, it's what I want you to feel at that certain point, So I have to, my characters, the dialogue, everything after is the conduit to how I want you to feel. And then I'm going to bring you on this emotional roller coaster to, tell the story.
And
All about the feeling.
A.S. Burner says, I'm writing 2 books at once. One is overly plotted out. The other is pretty sporadic. I'm seeing which works for me.
Yeah, I got some inspiration today, and I wrote a bunch of stuff, and then I realized, oh, this is probably going to be part of book 2. But I think it was a pretty good scene.
Stormcrow said, "Oh, sorry, I thought you were done." Stormcrow said, "I got the ending of all 3 acts of the first book written to a T, but dialogue, character dynamics, and prose is the thing that kills me. I want to give you all quality. You deserve that." Yeah, it'll take some time to get used to it, and that's, if this is your first project, the beta reading will probably be a big help for you in that.
Beta
And
reading will
also-
help a lot.
Yeah.
As well as reading it aloud to yourself in a slow and narratively driven manner. That helps me leaps and bounds.
Yeah. Read it. When you're going back to edit it, and you got to read it out loud. You can't read it back in your mind. You have to read it out loud.
And you have to do it in as close as possible to Fran Drescher's voice.
Oof.
Yeah,
Wow.
but another thing, I know a lot of people have said it, but read other books. And like when you read something, different settings, notice the different way people talk, what sounds right within that world. We see a lot of that in modern TV shows where they have a medieval setting, yet they're talking like modern day teenagers, and it's like nails on a chalkboard. So you could get away with having one character who talks a little more modern than the rest if that's their shtick. But if you even with that one, if you overdo it, it's just going to make it, it's got to be tread carefully with that kind of stuff. But yeah, check out the prose in different books and different settings. Try and think of whatever the setting you're working with. Read some books that are similar and see how they speak. And yeah, that's the best I could think of off the top of my head. What do you guys think? What else can you do to?
Well,
improve
my
this
writing
board?
style is essentially me vomiting on a page and then me bludgeoning the holy hell out of it until something decent ends on the page.
That's become my writing style. You're not alone.
Yeah, I keep trying to tell myself first draft, I'm just getting the idea on paper, and then I can go back and work with that after. But I can't help it. I'm sitting there going, how do I want to word this? And that's when I end up spending over an hour on one sentence sometimes. And other things just seem to flow so well, but it really does. You've got to. It takes a while to develop the feel for what's what, if that makes any sense.
I'm working on a short story right now, and it was inspired by, it's like most the other short story I wrote, inspired by real world events. So I know how it ends vividly. I know how it ends, and I had a pretty good introduction. I still feel it's pretty good. I have no idea what to do in the middle. I'm just kind of like,
I'm not
intermission.
familiar
I
with
don't know.
I'm not familiar with the Lloyd
Usually-
Alexander style of writing.
Usually
But,
conflict will work in the middle. Usually you want to put conflict somewhere.
On the topic of period and dialogue, especially if you're going for a certain period in history, I can at least sticking at least somewhat to that era is really important. Now, granted, I think a lot of that can be bent a little bit whenever you do your own unique setting. I do that a little bit with what I'm going to be putting out. It's not Joss Whedon dialogue by any stretch, but I remember in earlier drafts I had the dialogue written out as full on King's English, and it just did not sound right to me, like not one bit. And I had to kind of pull myself back and say, I know the emotion of what I want with this, but it's not clicking. So how do I reword this to where it's getting that across along with the tone I'm going for? I want it to have a bit more of a punch.
Yeah, I have a scene where the dialogue between a couple of the characters, I'm like, this would be, I'm looking at it, I'm like, this is very wooden. It's almost like they just blankly made some statements when this should be an emotionally charged scene. It's like, I need to fix that. Yeah, trying to hold the right tone. It's like the lines I had down match the characters, but not the circumstance, if you know what I mean. It's like people react different ways in different situations, and I had them way too stoic.
I've also heard this is the case with a lot of writers. I'm definitely guilty of this myself. I've also heard John A. Douglas talk about it a little bit with his book, is whenever you do the first draft or so, a lot of your characters will sound the same, or at least similar to one another. And finding that sense of character voice is something you kind of have to learn as you go along. I don't really know of another way to do it other than just writing itself. That's kind of a skill you have to pick up.
You have to hear the character's
gotta
voice in your
develop
head. You have to make different voices for them.
Yeah.
So when you're writing it, you write it in their voice.
Now, where I have a lot of trouble separating character voice was with two of my main characters. Haley and Elizabeth, they're the same age, they're best friends, so they're together all the time. So they're going to sound a lot alike, but not exactly. So I have to sit there and think, okay, it has to sound like this could fit either of them, but then it's got to have that certain something that, okay, that's what one would say, not the other. And when things are that close, that's when it gets interesting trying to have some distinction, and usually an expression thrown in that one is prone to use and the other is not is a way to help. But yeah, it can get tough when you have two characters that are best friends and together all the time. Their vernaculars are going to become very similar.
My two main characters are brothers who are separated across from each other only by a couple of years, and they're pretty much together all the time. And like you said, giving each one of them a distinct voice has been kind of one of the hardest parts about this project of mine, because it's very easy to cross those wires sometimes. One will sound like the other, or both kind of have the same voice at the same time. So it's important to know what each of them want and how they're different at the same time. I've almost kind of made them like two different parts of the same coin. They almost have like polar opposite aspects, so they bounce back and forth a lot more.